Hi everyone, it's John from What Up. Welcome back to another video, and today we're doing a breakdown of the latest Wheel of Time episode, episode 4 of Season 3, A Road to the Spear. So if you love the Wheel of Time as much as I do, or if you're just excited about Season 3, or have questions, or want to keep up with all the latest news and rumors and goings-on, consider making us your home for Wheel of Time news, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and of course, tell all your friends. Now, since we are doing a breakdown video, I am going to give full book spoilers for this. However, these breakdown videos are very useful to folks who haven't read the series. So if you're one of those folks out there that has not read the books, but thoroughly enjoys the show and has some questions and does not mind spoilers, this is the video for you. For those of you out there who are in the process of reading the entire book series or don't like spoilers, these are not the videos for you. So, if you haven't read the entire Wheel of Time series, that's The Eye of the World Through Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, and have not seen the whole show, we're talking seasons 1, 2, and 3, up to episode 4 of season 3. I'm going to ruin plot points, character arcs from both those mediums, because we're going to do explanations, and we're going to talk about where the story diverges from the books, where things are the same, what inspired certain things in the show, and where things are amalgamated. So, a lot of good information is coming out of these videos, but again, inherently spoilery. It's just the way it is. All right, let's bring up our first scene here. All right, so in the opening scenes of episode 4, we see Lan and Rand practicing with the sword once again. Now, this is something that a lot of book fans were very excited to see on screen in the last episode, and again this episode too, and they do some more exposition here talking about a couple of different things. They talk about the Flame of the Void, they talk about Blade Master, they talk about how tired Rand is and how he can't really stop, but all of it has little drawbacks to the books. Now, it's not exactly this way in the book series, I will say that. This scene and scenes like it in the show are call-outs to multiple different scenes. There's not one point in the fourth book, The Shadow Rising, or even the third or the second book we can point at and go, that's where this scene is from. This is an amalgamation from what we see in the beginning of The Great Hunt, the very first chapter where Lan and Rand are training in Faldara, including some other sparring matches and training that they had within the Eye of the World, the first book of the series, and again in The Dragon Reborn, and following up with more here in The Shadow Rising. It's just one of those moments where Lan and Rand connect. Now, Rand has a big arc in the book series, and we're talking a very big arc, and he is just like the Wheel of Time. He starts out as good and wholesome, and he just spins that wheel right around, and he goes all the way down, and he's not exactly evil, but he gets very, very hard, very, very tough, and very unbendable at one point or another, and then he has to learn lessons to bring him back up to his good-natured self. And a large part of his good-natured self was nurtured by both Tam, his father, which we haven't seen since the first season of the show, and Lan. Now, Lan is one of those things that he stays with him more often within the book series than anyone else, and a lot of the lessons he learns from Lan he uses throughout the entire book series. So seeing this on screen is an absolute treat for book readers, but it's real important for show watchers too, because you're getting these little tidbits from Lan, and you're getting to know Rand in a better way, if that makes any sense. You get to know where his mind's at, you get to know where his ethics and his emotions lie, and it's good to see. Now, they talk a bit about the Flame of the Void, which I mentioned in my Easter egg video, but essentially the Flame of the Void is something that is called a bunch of different things within the book series, but Rand calls it the Flame of the Void. He takes a flame in his mind, he feeds all emotion, all hate, all anger, basically everything, fear, into it until he's floating in nothingness. And then in that nothingness, he's basically essentially one with everything and can anticipate things before they happen. It makes him a better archer, it makes him a better swordsman. It's where he can grasp the one power. There's all kinds of things to it. And it's a really important thing that he does in the book series, and is described a fair bit in internal dialogue that Rand has in the books. But it's really hard to show that on the screen. So just mentioning it here is probably all that we're going to get of the Flame of the Void. They may talk about it a bit later, but this may be it. But again, real important scene here showcasing the relationship between Rand and Lan. And again, not something you can point at one certain spot in the books, but it is something that happens multiple times, and they're kind of condensing it here in a few scenes within the season. Now we have a scene with Moraine and Egwene with the Aiel Wise Ones and the Gai Shan, and a few things are discussed here. Essentially, they talk a little bit about Gai Shan and what it means to be a Gai Shan and Aiel and G.E.T.O., and they also talk a little bit about Rhuidean, and it gets slipped that maybe Moraine should go to Rhuidean. It's one of those things that the Wise Ones had dreamed, and they talk about, and they shouldn't have. They give her a glimpse of what should be, and then she decides to go to Rhuidean. Now, these scenes do happen in the book series. In fact, they're pretty close to exactly what happens in a certain chapter, but it's after Rand, Matt, and Aviendha head into Rhuidean. So we know Aviendha is already gone. We know Rand and Matt went into Rhuidean. Egwene and Moraine go and sit down with the Wise Ones, and they talk a bit. And it's during this conversation that they let slip that she might have to go to Rhuidean, or she should go to Rhuidean. And then she says, "Well, I'm going to go." And it's decided that she does go at that point. So yes, this is almost word for word some of the conversations that happen within the book series when they discuss about the Aiel, about their culture, and about what the city is and what it means, including the rings and what Moraine may see when she goes to Rhuidean and goes through these rings. But it's one of those things where it's not in the same order as it is within the book series, and for good reason, because in the show we have yet to hit the point where everybody is heading into the ancient city, and we haven't even got there in the show yet. But again, this scene here is almost word for word what it comes from the books. They talk a bit about Gai Shan and Ji'ito, which I think will probably be an entire episode all by itself for me. I do have a few explained videos talking about the Aiel and Ji'ito on my explained playlist if you folks want to know more about that till I put out a video describing it for the show. But for now, this is essentially pretty much the same as it is in the books right now. So let's get on to the next scene here. This scene has some stuff in it that is fairly important as far as history and behind the scenes knowledge that's required going forward in the show, but it's done in such a way where it's a fun thing. So Aviendha and Lan are sparring, and they're not just sparring. I mean, like, Lan's having fun, Aviendha's kind of having fun. Aviendha knows it's pretty much her last hurrah as a Maiden of the Spear at this point, sparring with Lan. And that's essentially because Aviendha can channel, and she is called to be a Wise One's apprentice, and she's been avoiding that for quite some time. She's a Maiden of the Spear. Now, in the book series, exact same thing. She clings to being a maiden for a very long time, and it's not until they're at the slopes of Rhuidean that she is sent to go into Rhuidean. And essentially the next scene we see after this fight between her and Lan, when her spears are taken from her and they're broken, that happens in the books as well. So when a Maiden of the Spear is chosen to become a Wise One, or is called to become a Wise One, all her belongings are taken, and then if she doesn't come out of Rhuidean, she doesn't come out of the ancient city, it's distributed to her family for remembrance. If she does come out, they're burnt. Everything is burned. The metal from her spearheads is made to make things that are useful but are not weapons. So belt buckles, tools, things that they're nice, and then she has to give them out with her own hands afterwards. So this scene does explain exactly what's going on here before she goes into Rhuidean to become a Wise One's apprentice, although it doesn't happen exactly the same way in the books. Although when she is standing there speaking with the Wise One, that scene itself is pretty much beat for beat exactly what comes from the books. And it's a great way of introducing the fact that Wise Ones aren't exactly like every other society within the Aiel. You're called to become a Wise Ones, and the Wise Ones are the ones that basically pick and choose their apprentices. All right, so at this point, we've spent about 12 minutes of the cold open on the journey to Rhuidean. We're meeting the Shaido on the slopes of the city. We meet Couladin, we meet Savannah, and they have this sort of conversation where Rand is asking leave to enter Rhuidean, and Couladin gets upset at him and attacks him. It happens a bit differently in the book series, especially considering one of the main characters from the books is not in this storyline here, so we'll talk just a bit about that. Although it's close enough that I think that every single point that they want to make gets across here. So in the book series, instead of spending time journeying to Rhuidean, they start in the Stone of Tyr, and Rand goes out and finds a portal stone. Now, portal stones are used very infrequently in the books. In fact, I can count probably on one hand the number of times one is used. Essentially, it's a big stone pillar, and it's got all these carvings on it, and the carvings represent other worlds. So mirror worlds are called. So they're close to our world or different if people have made different decisions. They represent other stones as well within the world. So if you know how to use one properly, you can actually channel into it and pop from stone to stone and portal around. That's why they're called portal stones. Or you could pop into a completely different mirror world and be there as well, which did happen within the Great Hunt when Rand did it by accident. So here he just draws a whole bunch of the one power, draws it into an Ungrail he has, and then without knowing what he's doing, he transports a ton of Aiel, a lot of the Aiel that were with him in the Stone of Tyr, himself, Lan, Moraine, Egwene, and Matt Cawthon. Matt Cawthon is also with them in the Waste. And instead of coming to the waste and then journeying here and learning all of these things, they pop out right on the slopes of Rhuidean, and that causes a kerfuffle, kind of like what we've seen here. The Shado are upset. They go to kind of an attack mode, and then everybody's talked down. At that point within the book series, Rand asked to go to Rhuidean because he was told he had to. He got these answers from the Snakes and Foxes when he went in through a red twisted stone door frame in Tears. So it was actually the snake people that he got the answers from, and one of the things was he had to go to Rhuidean. So he asks Enter to leave. He asks leave to enter Rhuidean, rather, and the Wise Ones say yes. Couladin gets upset, and then Mat asks to go, and the Wise Ones say no, of course Mat can't go. And Couladin gets even more upset when Rand says, no, he's going to come anyway. He's with me. If I'm going, he's going. And then they're like, fine, he can go. And when that happens, Couladin attacks Mat, and the Wise Ones use the One Power to kind of rebuff Couladin, and that's when Moraine and Egwene see the fact that the Wise Ones can actually channel for the very first time in the book series. You see that here too, but it's more Couladin attacking Rand because Mat's not here. The Wise Ones use the One Power, and Moraine and Egwene get to see them using the One Power for the first time as well. So very, very similar. The only differences are, instead of the journey here that's spent explaining about the Aiel, their culture, the system of what's going to happen in Rhuidean, the Karakarn, that is all done kind of in exposition in the book series. Here it's an actual journey, and in the books they just pop up and show up here. For the show, I think this way works much better because otherwise you just have people standing around talking the whole time. At least they're doing things as they're learning all of this. But yeah, so anyway, that leads us into Moraine and Rand actually entering Rhuidean. Now, they do enter Rhuidean in the book series, but Rand goes down with Mat, and they can't enter arms, so here they're talking about removing all their weapons, and we see Moraine take a ton of knives out, just dump them around everywhere. That is exactly what Mat Cauthon does in the books. So this is a nice little call out to the fact that Mat did this and not her, and they showcased it in the show. And when they head down into Rhuidean at this point, pretty much everything that Moraine does while she's with Rand is what Mat does. Comments on the fog, comments that it's eerie and creepy, doesn't comment about the One Power. That's something that Rand actually kind of thinks about a little bit. But they've shifted the focus from Mat here to Moraine, which I think makes sense because Mat and Rand go into Rhuidean in the books, and some things happen, which we'll discuss in a moment. But Moraine enters afterwards. She finds out about Rhuidean, she finds out that she has to go from the Wise Ones, and then she runs down the slopes and goes in through the rings herself. Most of Moraine's journey and what she sees in the rings and in Rhuidean is all off-page. We don't actually get to see it. She does mention it in passing a few times later on, which we will bring up in a bit because it's one of those things that I'm seeing that people are like, well, why did they include this in the show? It makes absolutely no sense. She would never do this when she's going through her possible lives, when there are direct mentions to a lot of that stuff within the book series. But it's like blink if you miss it moments in the books. It's like 2 or 3 throwaway lines here and there mentioning these things because we don't actually get to see it on page. Once they're in Rhuidean and they comment about the fog and they're kind of wandering around, they see a few different things. One of them is Aviendha, the Tree of Life. And that is seen in the book series. Moraine and Rand don't see it, and we don't really know the whole storyline of this. It happens throughout a number of books much later when we figure out exactly why the Aiel crossed the Dragon Wall, why they went to the wetlands to kill Laman, and why the battle on Dragonmount actually happened and Rand was born there. This scene here gives a bit of exposition where they actually talk about it, and we learn the whole history. We learn why the Aiel War happened. We learned Moraine's uncle is a king, which is something that was kind of touched on in season 2 a little bit here and there, but not a whole lot, talking about her family falling from grace and whatnot, because he cut down the sapling that he was given after growing to a tree to make a throne out of it, and then angered the Aiel, and that started the Aiel War. It's really neat that we're seeing this. Yes, we do get to see it within the context of the book series with Rand and Mat, and they talk a bit about it, but it's more of, oh, this is cool, we see it. It's not a big history lesson like we're getting here. Now, at this point within the book series, Rand walks through the columns, and then Mat goes off and does his own thing. We're going to talk a bit about Mat's story now. This is a story we have not yet seen within the show, and it's fairly important to Mat's character, but we know something similar is coming because we've seen visions earlier on in the series, and I think it was in episode 2, from Min, showing that it could happen. So, in the world of the Wheel of Time, there are 2 twisted stone red redstone door frames. One is in the Stone of Tyr, and it leads to the realm of the Snake People. And there's a second one in Rhuidean that leads to the realm of the Fox People. Now, these people are the Elfin and the Elfin. I have an explained video here on my channel talking in great detail about them, but essentially think of them like aliens. They're in a different universe. They look different. They feed on people's emotions. So when you go there, they get to feed on your emotions. Strong emotions, they super love them. They eat them right up. And Ta'veren especially, it's a huge thing for them to have a Ta'veren there because they even eat more of the emotion, and it makes them feel even more powerful and strong. So the stone door frame in the Stone of Tyr that goes to the Snake People answer 3 questions. You ask them 3 questions, and they'll give you 3 true answers. Matt went in there and asked some questions within the book series, and the questions, for the context of the reader, we understood what a lot of them meant, especially if you've read the series before, you can pick them out. But Matt had no idea what they meant, and he was very confused by them. So he went through another Twisted Stone door frame in Rhuidean when he saw it, because he's like, I've done this once. Let's do it again. Let's see if they can answer these questions better so I can understand them. Only it takes him to a different place. It takes him to the fox-like people, not the snake people. Now, these people don't answer questions. They give boons. So they're like genies. They give you 3 wishes, so to speak. So inadvertently, during the conversation with them, he's getting more and more agitated, more and more frustrated because they're not answering his questions. And he ends up accidentally asking for 3 things. He asks for a way to be rid of Aes Sedai and the One Power. So he's given a Foxhead medallion. And that Foxhead medallion allows him to melt the weaves used on him, so he can actually be channeled at. Second thing was he wants the memories the holes in his memories filled. And they ended up filling the memories with memories of past generals, heroes, people who were good strategists who could fight. So he got that. The third thing was he wanted a way out back to Rhuidean, which is a smart thing because one of the things you're supposed to do before you ask for something from these people is to set a price. And he never set the price. So by not setting the price, they hung him from the tree from Aviendha. So he was actually hung by a rope attached to sort of a sword spear. It's called an Ashendari, which is what his weapon is for the rest of the series. It's got sort of a blade engraved with ravens, a long quarterstaff length attached to it. Just like a sword kind of crammed onto a quarterstaff is what it looks like. And he used it like he's always used it. We've seen that during Min's viewing in episode 2, where Matt was hanging from a red twisted stone door frame with something kind of poked into the top of it. Now, the thing poked into the top of it, we looked at it quite closely. It looks a little bit like a spear. Could possibly be the Ashendari, but we're not 100%. But we know that part of Matt's storyline is canon for the show. It just hasn't happened yet. And it's not going to happen here. So there's a lot of speculation of when it will happen. So all of this that we're seeing in the show with Moraine up to this point, it gives us good context for history of the Aiel War, Rand's parentage, a few different things of that nature. But she also gets something else out of the tree, and it's an object of power that we now know as Sarkanen. And we'll talk about that in a little bit and how it differs from what we see in the books. Now, Rand enters the columns in the show, and what we see in the columns in the show is almost the same as what we see in the books. This first scene here, and that's why I'm showing it, is something we don't see in the books. So we don't actually see him through the eyes of his father, Jonduin. He starts a little bit further back. And there are far more. So there are additional lives that he steps through as he walks through these columns, and it covers a full 2 chapters, the Road to the Spear and the Dedicated. So he keeps going further and further back in time, and you get a more complete history of the Aiel. They obviously couldn't do every single one of them for the show. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but they hit all the most important beats. They walk back through and how Aiel became Aiel, how they were transporting goods for the Aes Sedai, how they were given all these objects of powers in wagons and told to keep moving during the breaking. All of that happened within the book series, and the only other scene that was a little bit different was the scene with Mirian, with Lanfear. We do get to see, from the point of view within the Age of Legends, for one of the Aiel that works for Mirian, but we don't get to see him interacting with her. We don't get to see her drilling the hole in the bore. It's kind of from a different point of view, someone a little bit further away. So they changed that up a bit to make it more easy to understand for the viewer. But other than that, all of these scenes are ripped directly from the books, and they are written almost exactly the same way as they would be from the book series. You're just missing a few different steps along the way, which, I mean, would have added a little more flavor and context, but the gist of it is all there. We would have had a 4-hour episode if they had included every single step back through his lives. Now, interspersed with Rand going back through the columns and walking through his ancestors' lives is this scene where Moraine draws out a crystal spear. Now, we do learn that this crystal spear is called Sarkanen, and it is the most powerful sangreal that a woman can use in the show. We learn that during Rand's flashbacks. So we have to explain a little bit here, because this is a bit different than what's in the books. So during the context of this episode, we learn that there are two very, very powerful sangreal. Sarkanen, which a woman can use, and Callandor, which a man can use. And they are the most powerful objects that can amplify the one power in the world for the context of the show. Now, in the books, things are a little bit different. Moraine doesn't find any objects of power within Rhuidean while she's there. She does enter the rings. She goes through the rings, and we'll talk about her journey there in a little bit, and then she leaves Rhuidean afterwards. Rand does eventually find two small statues. And these small statues are called access keys, and they're Terra and Grail. And the access keys sort of act as a remote for two very, very powerful, the most powerful sangreal ever created during the Age of Legends. They are giant statues, so giant they can't be moved. So one is of a man, one is of a woman, and one is for a man, and one is for a woman. It makes sense that way, right? So using these access keys, you can access them from anywhere in the world and be essentially... It's stated by Lanfear, among others in the book series, that you could be the equal to the Dark One of the Creator with that much power. So they're really, really strong. And they were created during the Age of Legends basically out of desperation. So it was, the light was losing the War of the Power. They didn't know what to do. This was one of the plans they had. And they never actually used them, because if they did, they were worried they'd break the world, which happened anyway, but in a different fashion. So that's... The Chosen Call is what they're called, the two sangreal. In the show, Callandor and Sarkanen are essentially amalgams for the Chosen Call. I did a leaks video on this a few months ago, where I had confirmation that these will act as the most powerful sangreal in the show, and they will be not referred to as the Chosen Call, but act as them. Now, in the book series, there's also Sarkanen and Callandor. So in the show, we have Sarkanen as the most powerful sangreal a woman can use, and Callandor's most powerful sangreal that a man can use. In the books, there's something a bit different. They're both used for men. Sarkanen is a few different parts. So it is a scepter with an hourglass kind of attached to it, and you had to gather it in parts together, and it became an incredibly large, kind of like Warhammer scepter that was also a sangreal for men. And there are rumors that Sarkanen also amplified your desires to the point where you became so reckless to achieve them that it ended up in your downfall. Not that it was cursed. There's not really cursed objects within the Wheel of Time, but you could kind of think of it that way. This was something that Demandred, one of the Forsaken, gathered off-page in the book series, and then showed up the last battle with it. It wasn't even mentioned until the last battle, and then it became something that a lot of the male channelers wanted. And they wanted to get a hold of it and do it, and then it became lost during the last battle. So Sarkanen was not something used by women, and it was very important for the last battle for a brief period of time, and then it was never seen again. Callandor, on the other hand, is also another sangreal used by men, and it is also thrust into the heart of the stone, in the Stone of Tyr. And when the Dragon Reborn draws it out, it kind of proclaims him as one of the many signs that he is the Dragon Reborn. And they've referenced it in the show a few times, and it sounds like it'll be exactly the same. Now, Callandor in the book series does a couple of different things. So the first thing is every sangreal and engreal has something known as a buffer. And the buffer prevents you from drawing too much of the one power, so you don't burn yourself out or hurt yourself while using it. You hit your limit, which is greatly increased by the engreal or the sangreal, and that's it. It's a whole lot, it's hard to handle, but you can't die or burn yourself out using it. Callandor does not have that buffer. You can draw the one power until you burn yourself to a crisp or lose the ability to channel. There is no stopgap to that measure. It can be safely used with this in a circle with a woman, though, who is helping to control the flow so you don't burn yourself out. But there are two other things that are special about Callandor that we don't learn until the last battle, and this is one of the reasons we give a 14-book spoiler warning. The first one is that while it also amplifies the one power, it in turn amplifies the taint. So the taint that's on Saidin, the male half of the true source, is also amplified at the same time, so you can basically kind of go wild while using it. And we do see that in a scene in the book series when Rand is using it during battle with the Shan-Chan, and he starts killing his own people indiscriminately along with the Shan-Chan and doesn't realize he's doing it, because he kind of goes wild with the taint at the same time. The second thing is it's also Sangreal for the true power. Now, the true power is essentially what we get to see at the end of this episode, near the end of this episode, when they drill into the Dark One's prison. It's the thing that Mirian or Lanfear was talking about. And when you use Callandor to amplify the true power, it turns crimson or red. It kind of glows red. So it's the only mention that I'm aware of an Angreal or Sangreal that works with the true power, and it is an important kind of tidbit, I want to say, towards the last battle, and we're going to have to do an entire breakdown of the last battle here on the channel at some point or another for you folks. But yeah, super important, and I won't get into it more than that because it'll ruin more things than I want to. Now we're getting these really great shots of all the possible futures that Moraine is seeing in the rings, and it's a circular camera, like a wheel, kind of flipping around, going back and forth. I thought it was really, really smart cinematography, really, really great way of showcasing this stuff, and just absolutely wild that we're going to see this on screen. Now, one of the things that we don't get to see on page in the books is Moraine's journey through the rings. We don't see that at all. We only hear about it afterwards. Now, Moraine says a couple of things about it. She knows what she has to do to assist and help the Dragon Reborn. She knows that a few things would end in disaster, bonding Rand, sleeping with Rand. There are a few other things that she knows she cannot do, and she mentions them, and we do get to see them in this kind of circular thing, but she doesn't mention everything. So I thought this was a really great way of showcasing all of the possible futures that she's seeing by stepping through the rings, and we don't actually get to see that journey on page in the books, but it's neat to see on screen. And we get to see the actual board being drilled into the Dark One's prison in this episode, which is wild. I thought they did a really good job of this, personally, but we're going to talk just a bit about how and why this is super important. So essentially, within the context of the books, we don't see this on screen. It's talked about a few different times. We get to hear the aftermath and different things that are happening, but it's not a page-for-page bore through. And it's something that I would really love to read, honestly, if they ever did something like that. But essentially what it was is Mirian was one of the researchers working at the Callandor, which is that big circle Death Star looking thing that was floating in the sky, and her and another researcher were looking at trying to create a way that men and women could use the exact same power. Now, in the context of the show here, it says that anyone can use it. Aiel, pretty much everyone else, people who can't channel, anyone and everyone could use this power. That is not how it was described in the books. It was a power that both men and women who could channel could use. Now, it doesn't mean that that's not what it was meant, but in the context of the way it was written, it was people who could channel the one power being able to use the same power together, because men and women use very different aspects of the one power. It's been touched on a few times in the show and talked about a little bit here and there, more so this season, especially with Moraine and Rand when they're talking together, but it's very, very prevalent in the books and a very big theme of the books that they use the power in different ways and they access different types of power. So Said and Said are very, very different sides of the same one power. Now the true power, or what they didn't know what to call at this point, some sort of power, they felt behind the pattern and they thought they could bore a hole into it and then use it, and it's something that both men and women could use, because even though men and women use very different aspects of the power, they did some absolutely legendary things together, no pun intended, because it's the Age of Legends, but they thought if they could use the same power, they could do even more together. What they didn't realize is the true power is basically the essence of the Dark Ones. So what you're seeing here is the whole being bored into his prison. Now, we haven't really seen this in the context of the show in present day just yet, but there is a spot within present day time in the book series where the Dark One's presence can be felt more than anywhere else on the planet, and that is where this was during the Age of Legends. So it became a central mountain, Mount Doom in the Blight, where this bore or this hole has been drilled, and you can walk into the side of the mountain down underneath, and you can get and feel the thinness of the pattern where the bore was, where it was kind of patched back up, and you can bask in the presence of the Dark One, so to speak. So yeah, so this true power essentially is the Dark One. You're using the Dark One, and we've seen it in the show a few different times. We've seen Lanfear be resurrected by the true power. We've seen her talk about it a couple of different times. Essentially, in the book series, it's something the Dark One only gives to his most trusted servants, and very sparingly at that. If one became nae'blis, and Moraine, who is the reincarnate version of Shamael, is nae'blis in the book series, he has the ability to use the true power as much as he wants all of the time. But other than that, it's given very sparingly to certain people for little bits here and there. They used it in the show to resurrect Lanfear, to kind of get around that problem in the books. So in the books, when a Forsaken dies, the Dark One gets a new body, crams her soul into that new body, and Bob's your uncle. They're up and running within a little bit. They just look different. Do that in the show, they would have to recast a few times. And that's not really ideal for a show like this, having to recast and get to know new characters and whatnot, even though they are technically the same character. So just having the true power resurrect them, I think, was what they intended. Either way, we've seen it used in the show a couple of times so far. It's characteristic by something called the saw, which are little flecks of black that go through your eyes. The more you use it, the more flecks of black, until you see a blizzard and a storm, and then it's just pure black eyes afterwards. It's also far more addictive and far harder to resist than the one power by a factor of a whole lot. It doesn't really say how much, but a ton. It's way more addictive than the one power. One power in the books and in the show is addictive. You want to use it. It's like a man or a woman dying of thirst. You want to drink it in. True power is way worse than that. The last thing I want to talk about is this. This is where Rand meets Aviendha for the first time after she comes out of the rings. Now, you have to remember, Aviendha has also seen every possible future laid out before her, and one of the aspects of going through the rings is that they forget mostly everything, but they get a general sense of where their life should go, what decisions they should make, and what big life events are going to happen to them. She comes out of these rings, and she is kind of disgusted with Rand, and she doesn't want to be around him, and she kind of leaves really quickly, while giving him some odd looks. It's because within the book series, she learns that she's destined to be with Rand, so to speak, in the books. So Rand has 3 love interest from the books. Aviendha is one of them, Elaine is another, and Min is a third. We are pretty sure they're going to update the way that sort of love square, I don't know what you'd call it when there's that type of it's not a love triangle, but when 4 people are in a relationship together in the books, because they're not really in a relationship together. You have 3 women who are in a relationship with Rand, not with each other, with Rand. They're friends, but they're just in a relationship with Rand. We've already seen that Aviendha and Elaine sort of kind of formed a bit of a relationship earlier on in the season. So at this point in the context of the show, she's likely found out that she's going to be with Rand, and she is upset about that because she has formed a bond with Elaine already, and she doesn't want to be with Rand. That's my guess. She'd rather be with Elaine. Now, in the book series, she learns this, and her and Elaine are friends, and Elaine and Rand already have a bond at this point. They've already kind of spent some time together in the Stone of Tear. They have a relationship, and she's upset about that, and she makes jokes and quips for a very long time within the book series about Rand being with Elaine, and that Elaine owns him, and that he's just Elaine's, because she's seen in her own future that she's going to be with Rand. So that's why she's looking at him here with disgust and kind of anger a little bit and confusion. It's not because she's learned the history of the Aiel. She hasn't done that yet. She will later. She's just gone through the rings right now, and she's learned that she's going to be with Rand, and probably that upsets her a little bit. That's likely why you get this kind of reaction from her in the show. All right, so we've walked through the episode. We've hopefully explained a bit of where some of these storylines are coming from and some of the things behind what's happening in the show. And I, for one, am very excited where the rest of the season is going to go, and I can't wait to break all that down for you as well and relate to the books. Now, this is probably one of the more book-accurate episodes of the entire series so far. There was so many things just pulled directly from the page, or so many things that gave context to things we've already seen in the show, and I thought it was masterfully done. Again, probably one of the best episodes, if not the best episode of fantasy TV I have ever seen. And a lot of very big critics tend to agree with that statement right now, which is wild. So here's the thing, folks. We have a ton more coming for you this week. We have some interviews with Shora Dishlu. We have interviews with Kate Fleetwood. I have some news videos I'm going to bring out. I'm going to do some more explain videos if we ever get to those, if we have time. Of course, there's so much Wheel of Time to talk about. There's a ton of stuff on the go. So if you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so, so you don't miss all of the great content coming out. And of course, episode 5 is coming next week. Like, we're building back up, folks. There's another episode this season that I rated a 10. We are going to see that before the end of the season. So there's one more 10. So there's 3 episodes I've given 10s to. Episode number 1, episode number 4, and then another one. So there is another one coming that is just as good as this episode and just as good as episode 1 in many different ways. So watch out for that. And of course, we'll do Easter eggs, reviews, and breakdowns for all the new episodes coming out. So there's that. Thank you so very much for sticking with us here to the very end, folks. Here's to many more.